Welcome to Haugen Racing, guys. Today we're going to talk about the best drift cars for the new year. So since it is now 2021, brand new year for you guys to get into drifting, or maybe you already are. I want to do this video a little differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search through and just search best drift cars of 2020, 2021, kind of comment on those, and then propose some that I think are the best. And at the end, we'll kind of have ourselves a nice little list of some of the best drift cars. This is World's Ultimate, 11 good drift cars 2021. This one actually looks pretty good until they have 2019 BMW M5. That would be a very serious drift car. It would be a great drift car, but I like this. I like Toyota GT86. I wouldn't say 2019. I would go and look for like one of the first, like an FRS or a BRZ. Get some used, some cheap. They're a little low on horsepower, but I think if you were to get one, if you could find one super cheap, de-weight the crap out of it, put on a nice exhaust and intake, maybe a little tune, I think that would be a great starter drift car. MX-5, I mean, Miatas have always been great drift cars. I don't know about a brand new 2019 Mazda Miata. If you can find one cheap or you want to ball out, then by all means. They're also lower power, but I think they're lighter than the FRS. And I know that they're pretty zippy, let's say, from the factory. BMW M5, I'm just gonna go ahead and say no. I mean, they're saying the competition package will add it to be 617 horsepower. I mean, if you wanna go there, then go there, but you're gonna be cashing out, and that's a pretty insane first drift car, or even just any kind of drift car. Older BMWs though, great. Older M3s, E36, which brings us to the next one on these guys' list, the 2019 C63 AMG. Aaron's shaking his head behind the camera like,
I used to have a 2012 BMW, and just the maintenance alone was ungodly.
Are you finna take a loan out and get a C63 AMG off the lot and go drift that thing?
Not in the slightest.
Matthias would. If you guys are new to this channel, you don't know who Matthias is, but that was like my alter ego that when we used to do comedy stuff. He would get a C63 AMG. That'd be a perfect missile car. I'm not gonna recommend that for you guys. Subaru WRX STI, absolutely not. It's all-wheel drive. I know you can switch it to rear-wheel drive and things, but it's just not the same. It's not set up for it. Ford Focus RS, I don't know enough about these things. I know they have a drift mode, and this thing even says that, and I've seen that. I don't think so. I don't know of anyone that's making angle kits for them or anything like that. I know as a rally car, it's a completely different thing. The Stinger, that's another expensive car. The BMW Z4, these guys have some really expensive cars on here. In theory, some of these may be in like 5-10 years if they come down in price, sure. Like a 370Z Nismo, I'm gonna go ahead and say 2019, that's way too expensive, but you can find older 370Zs, even 350Zs for cheap, and that's a great drift car. The cool thing is too, it's V6. If you get one with the CD009, that's what we use in the R32. That's a great transmission, so you know you have a reliable like setup that's not gonna break. Also 350Z axles, that's what we were putting in, that's the R32 has 350Z axles as well. So, I mean, really, you get all the great stuff in just the stock car. So that's a good one. 2019 Toyota Supra, that's expensive for like a starter drift car, but I mean, obviously they're doing great in pro competition. Osmo did great with it. Gucci did great with it. Osmo's building like 3 of them now. This is actually kind of cool. BMW E36, truly great one. Okay, this is funny. They have Mazda MX-5 on here, older one, but a picture of an S14.
How dare they?
That's so funny. And then 350Z, yep. So actually, I would agree with a lot of the ones on this, except for the really expensive ones. Yes, they're good drift cars, but just, unless they're just balling out. Before we get on this list, I wanna shout out the S chassis. Yes, there's some drift tax, but I think you can still find them for cheap. There's that one that sold on eBay for like 35 grand, and then suddenly everyone thinks they're like collector cars. Some of them are collector cars, most of them are not. The great thing about S chassis is parts are still cheap. The one we're building right now, the exhaust parts are just like hella cheap. They're available, angle kits are cheap. So I still like that one. We'll see if it makes it on this list. Ford Focus RS.
No.
I think a lot of these guys are doing it because they see it in Ken Block's videos, but you have to understand that's a completely fully built race car. That's not even really an RS at this point. So I don't agree with that. Ford Mustang, yes. That is true. The new ones, I don't know if you can get those very cheap anymore, but obviously that's became a proven drift chassis. And even some of the older Mustangs, like just the model before this, great drift car. Miata again, definitely. Just know it is lower horsepower, like really low horsepower, but they are nimble and light. And you can get a turbo kit or do a couple little things and it's not that bad. RX-7, they're a sick drift car, right? But generally they're gonna come with a rotary, and generally stock rotary is pretty low horsepower, and unless you have some knowledge or access to people that know rotaries, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't know much about rotaries. I wouldn't feel super comfortable getting that as my first drift car. I would feel comfortable getting a rotary now because I know that we could figure it out and work on it, but if you're just trying to get into it, personally, I wouldn't. Nissan 240, there we go. 350Z, yes. Nissan Skyline, I personally agree, but those are really getting drift taxed, and they have a R34 on here, and R34 is expensive as hell. I don't know, I don't think you could build a Skyline as cheap as a 240 though, even with the crazy drift tax on 240s right now. You used to be able to get them cheaper, but even the base car now, you're up in the teens almost. That's a tricky one, but if you're like looking at, let's say, a newer Mustang or a 370Z, then maybe this is kind of in your wheelhouse. And for me personally, I'd rather get a Skyline. So if your budget's a little bit higher, maybe that's a good option. IS300. I've never drifted an IS300, but I obviously know they're good drift cars, and I'd agree with that one. SC400, SC300, and 400 used to be great drift cars. If the drift tax hasn't hit them, then that's still a good drift car, especially because you can swap two JZs and one JZs in them fairly easily. You can even find ones that are already swapped. There are a lot of parts available for that, angle kits. That's a good one. A86. I mean, that's a classic, but I think those are expensive. Toyota Supra, that's a great one. They're just a little bit more expensive on the chassis side. Again, I would put that kind of with the Skyline if you're thinking like 370Z, if your budget's more in like the teens or 20s and you want to get something dope, Supra could be a great option for you. All right, so let's look at one more article and we'll kind of see what cars are on here. So this is drifted.com. They've been around for a while, I believe. BMW M3 E36. You can do E36 or M3. M3 is just a little better if you can find one for a good price. That's a great option. This is interesting, R33 GTST. If you can find one for a good price and your budget's a little higher, then heck yeah. The cool thing is R34 and R33 are a very similar chassis. R34 is actually a little bit beefier, but the angle kit and like the suspension geometry on the front of Skylines is just unbelievable. And it's just a little bit better on the 33 and 34 versus the 32. MX-5, yup, 240SX. S14. It's funny, they have like an old video of Forest on here. BMW M3 E46. That's a great one. Nice thing about that is it's a little bit newer, so you're not gonna be, hopefully not as much of a rust bucket, a little bit more horsepower from the factory. It says the S54, which to my understanding is a great motor. You can swap it if you want, but I mean, if these numbers are correct, 340 horsepower, that's gonna be plenty, especially de-weight that thing, get a good angle kit. JZX90, first guys to say that. So JZX90s are starting to get more available as they're becoming more legal. Hopefully they drop the price. 180SX, yes, I mean it's cool because right-hand drive and all that, and you get an SR, but you're really gonna pay a lot of drift tax for that. I would rather just look for, you know, a left-hand drive SR20 swapped one. A86, already went over that. RX-7, I don't know why these guys put that on there. Like, unless you have some knowledge and access to a tuner and stuff, I would be weary of a rotary. Like, and that's just my personal opinion. Comment below if you guys disagree. It's just that it can be tough if you don't have access to stuff. This is an interesting one. C230 compressor, Mercedes. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea. I haven't really seen too many of those drift. This guy's shredding it. That might be more popular like in Europe. Infiniti G35 Coupe, for sure. I mean, it's basically a 350Z. That's a great drift car. And the cool thing is, just like a 350Z, you get nice transmission, nice diff, axles, engine. If you keep it like stock horsepower right around there, That's gonna be bulletproof drivetrain rise, and there's a lot of suspension available. So, you know what? There is one that's missing, and it's funny, none of these guys put this on this list. The Corvette. A lot of guys have been using Corvettes. As a drift car, great. You get an LS in it, you can still have air conditioning because it's not swapped. There's a lot of suspension parts being made for them now that are drift specific, and they're pretty affordable. So that's one they missed on this. I can't remember what other ones I added, but this is pretty comprehensive, I think. So if you guys are looking to get into drifting, any of these cars on this list, there's all sorts of budgets. I think you're good to go. Let me know what you guys think is missed on this list for the best drift cars of 2021. Comment below, and let's talk about it. Hit that subscribe button. Check out our missile build. Check out our video games, and we'll see you guys in a couple days. Peace.